Okay, this is an answer to a specific question about having zeros of 1 minus I. And first off, the first connection to make is that to remember that these imaginary zeros come in conjugate pairs. So if 1 minus I is a 0, 1 plus I has to be a 0 as well. And so next piece is, then where did they come from? If that's a 0, if I think about the factor that it would come from, it would have come from 1 minus it. So like if this was a 5, this would be x minus 5. So it's just 1 minus I. So it's x minus 1 minus I, and then this one would come from x minus 1 plus I. So there's that. All right, I finally focused it. So then distribute this negative into here. So I have x minus 1 plus I multiplied by, distribute this negative in here, x minus 1 minus I. And now I need to multiply these two things together. Lots of ways to do it, but I'm just gonna do this area model for multiplication, just because I don't want it to get too messy with all the loops. So one of these side lengths is x minus 1 plus I, and then the other side length is x minus 1 minus I. So let's do some easy ones. X times x is x squared, x times negative 1 is negative x, x times I is xi. So here's, I think, where some questions started to arise. Well, I'm almost there. Negative 1 times x is negative x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. So now we have negative 1 times I. So just like negative 1 times x is negative x, negative 1 times I is negative I. And then negative I times x is going to be negative x times I. Negative 1 times negative I. A negative times a negative is positive. 1 times anything is itself. So this would be positive I. And then negative I times I, that would be negative I squared. I squared is a negative 1. Square root of negative 1. Sorry, I squared is negative 1. Negative 1 is positive 1. So then now I have all the pieces. Now I just need to combine up some like terms. I have an x squared. Notice I have a negative x minus another x, so it's minus 2x. xi minus xi, those make a 0, right? Negative something plus positive it. I minus I, that makes a 0 as well. 1 plus 1 is 2. There it is multiplied out.